Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm really excited today to introduce our guest. We have Dr. Jan Hasbrouck with us. As you all probably know, she's incredibly well respected and well known, a very high level expert in education, especially, of course, reading. Jan's published many books, research studies, assessments. Her oral reading fluency norms are incredibly widely used, and there's much more. We probably don't have quite enough time to get into all of it today, her achievements and awards. Um, but I have been fortunate enough to know Jan for about 3 decades now. And so it's so good to see you. And I've just learned so much from her. I could say countless good things. So I will just tell you my favorite thing. And my favorite thing isn't the fact that Jan is great. It's clear she is, it's wonderful. But Jan is able to make others believe that they can become great too. And it's just such a beautiful quality. So, Jan, thank you for joining us today.
Well, Claire, I'm delighted, and what a lovely thing to hear from you. It's been yes,
It's all true.
yeah.
So, as I mentioned, I've known you for about 30 years. And
Mhm,
around that time, you learned about a little program coming out of St. Paul, Minnesota,
mhm.
known as Read Naturally. I think you were a professor in Texas, Texas A&M.
Yep,
Yep.
that's
Okay. And you
right.
came across this program that was teaching fluency that incorporated accuracy, automaticity while checking for comprehension. And these were pieces you were instructing in the classroom in Texas
Yeah.
with your college students. So, will you tell me a little bit about how you found Read Naturally, kind of what you thought of it at the time, maybe how it impacted your work, but also how it impacted reading education in general?
Yes, for sure. I do remember that. I remember having a conversation, with a guy, who came up to me, thankfully, after I had done a training session. The context of the training session, I don't remember. I've been doing sessions. I did one yesterday, so I've been
It doesn't end.
this on Fluency for decades and decades, so I don't remember that. But I do remember that he came up afterward and said, "There's a teacher," I think that's what he said, "There's a woman, there's a teacher, she is a teacher, in Minnesota who has created a program to teach students fluency, and he said, "It incorporates all the things that you just said in this training, that you have to have accuracy, you build to automaticity, but it's all about comprehension, and, have you heard of it?" I said, "No, I haven't heard of it," and I don't remember how he got me in contact. He might have had a I don't think we had websites in those
No.
days.
Oh, I don't
I'm
know.
not even sure we had
I
email.
can't even remember.
Somehow somehow he got me in contact, and somehow I had a conversation, it might have been email, I don't remember, with Candyce Ihnot, this teacher in Minnesota who was doing this thing called Read Naturally and told me about it, maybe sent me some samples. That part I don't quite remember, but it was so interesting that when I did have my first conversation with Candace, she also told me, "Oh, I know you. You've done those norms and you wrote a little phonics program." Like, yes, I did. And that little phonics program, I mean, I joke about it, but we never did anything with it. We gave it away mostly, but we sold a few copies, and I always say, like, maybe 84 copies, and Candace had 2 of them. It was so there's something kismet about that, we were meant to connect with each other. But then I did invite her to come down, and present Read Naturally to a graduate seminar that I was teaching on reading, and, I sat and listened and said, "Yeah, this can't be done better than this." It has all the pieces. She's thought about it so carefully. It had been pilot tested. I mean, well, not in a formal way, it was used. She was using it with kids, and it was clearly working. So 2 of my students, maybe more, but 2 of my students in that webinar or in that seminar were teaching in a middle school, which happened to be literally across the street from the university. That's irrelevant, but it just was. And they were teaching reading and decided, the stuff we're doing isn't working all that well. Let's try Read Naturally. So they both implemented Read Naturally. They both became huge fans of Read Naturally. I wanted to explore as a researcher a little bit more. So I did some research in both of their classrooms with students and we published that study. And yes, indeed, it worked. We could prove that with our study, but you could just watch the kids getting better. They were enthusiastic. That was one of the first things I really noticed was sixth grade kids, and a lot of them were boys for the reasons we all know. Those classrooms were not places of great enthusiasm and joy and, gee, I love coming to class and learning how to read. But it changed when they got into Read Naturally. It changed. I would get in there and the kids would stop me. Is Miss, did you know that volcanoes," like whatever they were reading about, and then they would wanted to show me, how well they could read. I mean, that's just such a rarity. So my first experience was, serendipitous. I would have learned about it eventually, but I was in at the beginning when, I think I remember Candace talking about doing it all on the dining room table, and I know the initial tapes that we had were, her voice or one of your daughters. In the early days for sure, but, I'm so glad I discovered it so early and so glad I was able to do a study and continue. Yesterday, when I did my training with teachers, I recommended strongly that they look into the Read Naturally strategy now implemented through Read Live.
Yeah, we're so lucky that we also, feel that it was just such a great thing for Read Naturally, to get connected with you too. I laugh when you talk about the 6th graders in Texas with the voice on the audio cassette because back then you're right, it was Candace's voice, and of course, she's from Minnesota, so she sounds like she's from Minnesota, and I think one of those teachers that you're talking about ended up being a trainer for us. In fact,
Yeah,
maybe both of
yeah,
them did.
all of them did. Yeah.
Yeah, and they always had a funny story when they would do trainings about how students who were native Spanish speakers and, lived in a home that spoke Spanish were all of a sudden reading and speaking with a Minnesota accent. And so
It really
I think it was that story that we realized we should get a professional voice that doesn't have quite an accent.
And it wasn't just the kids that spoke Spanish. I remember in that classroom, the student reading one of the students reading, "The whale lives in the ocean." Ocean. Like, "Oh, okay. Well, there's a different way of saying ocean, the
But it's not
whale."
wrong.
Oh, that's what I remember. No, even better. He said, "The whale? The
Wow.
whale lives in the ocean."
Oh gosh. Well,
No, those
there's
memories.
I often think of all the different reasons why Read naturally accelerates growth, and you already touched on a couple of them. One of them, you mentioned the kids love telling you the facts they learn, right? Because the stories are
Mhm.
so interesting. And we do, always written our own stories, and they're just super engaging that way. And you also mentioned that the kids are motivated. I mean, for struggling readers to get them to want to read to someone that they don't know, I mean, and to ask for that, is an incredibly, powerful thing to happen. We gotta get the kid buy-in. So that has been those have been the 2 things that I have found myself with working with struggling readers to be the most powerful, most exciting parts. Are there any other things about the program, that you found to be unique regarding maybe the different content that they were working in or that made ensured that they were making adequate progress.
Well, the fact that it is nonfiction, makes such a difference, that a you can get an 8th grader or a high school student or an adult to read a 2nd grade story that's informational text. They are interested in reading how Velcro was invented or biographies of famous people or whatever. Such a difference. You cannot ask an 8th grader to read a second grade narrative story. Mr. Fig climbs the magic mountain. Um, Second graders love reading that, but eighth graders don't. So the content in terms of motivation, in terms of interest, but the whole way, the elegance of the whole way it is designed, that in perhaps 25, 30 minutes, the students start with if you place them correctly, this was a lesson I needed to learn. You really have to place them according to the guidelines. If you place them according to the guidelines, they're in really challenging material, what we might use the term frustration level material, or certainly challenging. And when they go through all the steps, laying foundation for accuracy first, which is essential, reading along with the narrator, learning what the words mean, learning what the words say, then building to automaticity independently. That's another thing. Kids work independently so much. That's good for older students too. They're always being told what to do, and they get to read independently. But when they do all those steps, they really can, 25, 30 minutes later, they are able to read that story fluently and understand it and prove to themselves and others that they can do that. Doing it in that short a period of time is transformational because these kids, like sixth graders, the ones I was working with initially, have had 6 years of failure. They've never experienced, at least in reading, maybe in other things, hopefully basketball or math or something, but not in reading. They've never felt what it feels like to be successful, and they start with something super hard and within a practice time, and sometimes it really is within 30 minutes, sometimes we do it over a couple of days, but but they get that feel, like, "I couldn't read this, and now I can." And how did that happen? I practiced. I did that. And that they may not be able to articulate that, but it begins a transformation in not only their skill, which is what we really care about. We see, "Oh, your skill's getting better," but their feeling about it. "I can do this." It's agency, um and then that builds motivation. "I'm willing to try it again, and I can do this," and, uh, it's just if the program did nothing but that, if it just helped these struggling readers become more confident, it would be I would promote it and say, "You should buy this program." But it does that through the mechanism of teaching their brains to read with more automaticity, which connects to comprehension. Um, it's a miracle. It's the closest to a miracle I've ever seen in reading it. I just love knowing about it and love sharing it with people, who maybe don't know about it.
Yeah.
They're using hodgepodges of things like this, and they're doing a good job getting their kids, decoding with phonics, but they can't get in Scarborough's rope, there's that period where the rope is all sort of woven together, but not tightly. They wanna get it they don't know how to get to that tightly woven rope. Read naturally will get students to that tightly woven rope to fluent reading.
Mhm. Well, that you mentioned the very frustrating text, or not very frustrating, but very challenging. Sometimes I think you said almost to the point of frustration is close to the words you used, which piqued my interest because I've recently read a book by Dr. Tim Shanahan. I think you're familiar with him. I think the book is called Leveled Reading, Leveled Lives. And in that book, he discusses the importance of students reading challenging text. So, and Read Naturally, 35 years ago, when it first came out, students were placed in challenging texts. They got support throughout the program in order for the as you just so eloquently stated, to be able to be successful with that challenging text through the steps of the program. And Read Naturally's placement has always put students in more challenging text. And
Mhm.
we've also always provided for our lower level readers many more level options. So there's smaller steps up in those lower levels, and there are phonics levels. So
Yeah.
providing that incredibly important phonics support that those low level readers need. So, what is the current thinking out there in the reading research world that you know a lot more about? What is the current thinking on text difficulty? And do is there a difference between those emerging readers and what's appropriate for them versus, maybe a little older, higher level readers that are struggling?
Yeah. Well, I have had the privilege of working with Tim Shanahan on various projects for over 20 years. And in some of those, in some of that work, we are both invited to present it at gatherings of teachers, symposiums, or very things like that. And we sit in each other's audience. He presents and I listen to him, and then I present and he listens to me. And we've had a real influence in each other, I think. And for a long time, he has been aware that there was a misunderstanding of leveled instruction going on in the world. And in fact, whole curricula being developed, wildly popular curricula being developed where the whole point was to find the students just right level, the instructional level, and he was aware that, first of all, there was never any research that that was true, and that finally there was some research that he talks about a lot where people empirically studied that. Okay, let's try teaching kids at their instructional level. Let's teach them at a slightly more challenging level, and let's teach them at a significantly more challenging level. And in all the studies, when that happens, it's the students who get good instruction. It has to be good instruction, but in the most challenging levels make the biggest change. However, he also says, and in his book that I love, you're right, The Leveled Readers, Leveled Lives.
Okay.
I recommend that book all the time. It's very good. In that book, he talks about how did we get there? Where did that theory start and why is it wrong? But he also has, talks about those emerging readers, just like you said, Claire. Those are that's a different case.
Mhm.
As we're getting their brains rewired to connect language to this print that they're trying to figure out, during that process, the development of the alphabetic principle, sometimes it's referred to in research. Mark Seidenberg refers to this now as helping students achieve velocity. It's when they sort of get it that, oh, these letters represent print, and oh, I now have a strategy for figuring this out. For most students, that will be, kindergarten, first grade, maybe for some students, for a lot of students, but at least for some neurotypical students receiving good instruction, that might take into early second grade. And in that time, really highly decodable text and then slowly transitioning to more typical text through a instructional level is very, very appropriate, necessary, and important for those students. But once the alphabetic principle has been established, once they have achieved velocity, Mark Seidenberg is talking about this a lot. Tim wrote a whole book about it. It is imperative that we dump those, never proven, um, uh, leveled readers and move into more challenging text. But the key, and I did talk about this in my workshop yesterday, a lot of teachers don't really understand what that instruction looks like. What they've learned to do is find the student's level and basically send them off to read, and
Mhm.
then they check in with them, and that's what they know, teachers know as instruction. What the instruction really needs to be is what's woven into Read Live. You take the challenging text and first build the foundation of accuracy. That is absolutely essential. Read Naturally or Read Live does that through reading along with a narrator, but it could be that, it could be read alouds in a classroom, it could be choral reads, those kind of things, but the foundation of accuracy needs to happen first. Then we help the students build the automaticity, and all the way through, we're accessing meaning so they know what all the words are, they know what the sentences are, and then we show them through our instruction how to read more complex text. And from the beginning, when I finally got it, that Read Live worked, Read Naturally worked because of the complex text, I came up with this analogy in my own head to explain it to me. And it really was, and I talked to teachers about this, like going to a gym. If you go to a gym and you just do the things you already do well, which would be sort of instructional level, you're going to maintain where you are. If you wanna get stronger, which is most the reason we take the time and spend the money and go to the gym, is you have to work a little harder. And if you're going to really maximize your time, you're gonna work pretty hard and you need a trainer with you. You could do damage if you don't work with a trainer. So get the trainer to help you decide how hard you can do it and to be there to encourage you and show you how to do it so you don't injure yourself or whatever. And that trainer will also say to the you're now ready for something even harder. And that is the role that I think the teacher plays in Read Live. They are like the trainer. They help you figure out what's the level that's just hard enough and help you and encourage you and make sure you do it correctly and then move you up. So that supportive instruction is built into Read Live, but it is necessary when teachers start to make that shift of, oh, maybe I should move beyond instructional level. For most students, at least by second grade, what does that instruction look like? It looks like accuracy, automaticity, access meaning all the time.
Yep, yep. So those seem to be hot topics that have always been hot topics in reading. And it always kinds of the terms change,
Yeah.
buzzwords might change. Are there any things in the last few years, in addition to what you've just talked about, that might be considered areas that people are paying more attention to? Or have you exhausted those in your description, or are there different other additional things that you think are kind of more prevalent in the conversations today?
Well, I'm sure seeing a lot of conversation around data informed decisions in a way that is new for a lot of teachers. It wasn't part of their original training. The real data that they collected were, of course, everybody has to do the state test, but in a classroom level, it was those leveling assessments. I'll do this assessment to tell me what level that student goes into, and that was the extent of their use of data to inform their instruction. These days, with the framework of MTSS or RTI being used more in schools, more data for screening purposes, for progress monitoring purposes teachers are being asked to do that. Not all teachers really understand why they're doing that or how to incorporate it. A lot of administrators don't understand it either, so what they're doing is layering on more and more and more and more and more assessments, thinking that's the message of MTSS. Data informed, let's get lots and lots and lots of data. Um, but that's something that Candace knew from the beginning. She was in Minnesota, right there, real adjacent to the University of Minnesota, where they invented curriculum-based measurement, and had the privilege of participating in some of those early pilots while those researchers were figuring out what they were doing. Um, like frequency. No, we're not gonna do this 3 times a week with all the kids. That's,
So,
no, that's not right. But that was, we had to test that out. But Candace learned that from the beginning too, the value of those quick, short assessments for identifying which kids might need some extra help, but also the progress monitoring. So that is another thing. We haven't really talked about that, but the progress monitoring, the data collection that's built into Read Live is something that is also kind of new to the education world. And there it is, just built into this wonderful program. But that is the other thing, Claire, that I hear a lot of it's one of the things I'm being asked to talk about, present about a lot these days. Not only just reading fluency and how do we help our students do that, but what's this data-informed decision? What's the right data? How can we prevent ourselves from doing too much data? What's the essential data? And then once we've collected it, how do we use it to inform our instruction?
Yeah, and that I think is one of the beautiful things about curriculum-based measurement data because, of course, if you're doing formal assessments, you're not instructing, but curriculum-based measurement data can be included in your instruction, and so you're getting it's not a separate line item for teachers who already have too many line items.
Good.
This data can be collected right as they're working in the program. So I'm actually going to introduce Candice now. You've brought her up several times. Candice Ihnot is the creator of Read Naturally. She's also my amazing mother. And she was and is a reading specialist, special education Title I teacher. So back in the late 80s, she was working full time. She was raising four amazing children, and she decided to go back to school to get her master's degree, which I've raised a handful of children myself, and I would not have wanted to get my master's degree while doing it. Um, so while going to school, though, she was required, as Jan kind of alluded to, she was at the University of Minnesota, and right at kind of the time where a lot of these things were being looked at. And part of her schoolwork was to do research, figure out some things to do with students in the classroom. So use that research to drive your instruction. And then, of course, track the progress, track the results. And so throughout Candace's research, she found that teacher modeling, repeated reading, progress monitoring, those three strategies were often talked about as very effective in and of themselves. And so she thought, well, let's try all of them and we'll put them all into one powerful program. So she figured out a way to incorporate them all into this incredibly successful program. She used it with her kids, as Jan alluded to, kind of a little case study with her own students and saw incredible growth. So, of course, the district she was working in, Minneapolis Public Schools, wanted to use it, and neighboring districts wanted to use it. And her husband in 1991 said, let's start selling this. We'll turn it into a business. So, Read Naturally was launched in 1991. And then in 2001, kind of when we really started to gain a lot of traction, was after the National Panel of Reading stated that reading fluency needs to be explicitly taught. And at that time, Read Naturally was the only practical, systematic, deliverable program that was on the market. And not only were we on the market at that time when that statement was made, but we have already been doing it for 10 years. And so we had enhancements. We were at a point where other programs either didn't exist yet or certainly weren't as far along as we were. So today, Candice, I would suspect she'll tell you herself. I suspect she's going to tell you her favorite thing is working with kids, because she still does multiple times a week. And one of the reasons she does it is how important that is, she believes, into her job as improving the curriculum options that we have now, making sure that our programs are as effective, as easy to use for the teacher, as effective for the student. In order to do that, she wants to be working every day with it and see what things need to be improved on. And so, Candice, welcome to the program. It's great to see you. Would you, I suspect you would like to say hi to Jan because you two have known each other for so long.
Yes. Well, hello, Jan. Actually, I don't want you to stop talking because I feel like I've been to a workshop. You brought up all sorts of things to give my mind things to think about. And of course, walk down memory lane is always fun, but you also always bring something new to the table. And could never have completed the work we've done without you. And when I think back and remember finding your norms, those were life-changing for educators. And I've always respected your work and really appreciate your willingness to talk to us today, Jan.
My pleasure. What a joy for me.
And Claire, of course, I always like to talk to you.
Thanks.
The other thing, Jan, that has been really good is over the years you've updated your norms,
Yes.
which has been a good guidance for us because as we started to learn to work on fluency intentionally, we should have seen that in the change in norms. We should have seen that students generally were becoming more fluent, and I think that's true. And so, keeping those norms somewhat current is important.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
important for all of us. Yeah.
Well, we've got some plans in the works, Jerry Tyndall and I, because we've done all that work together. So it's always been the Hasbrouck and Tyndall norms. They wouldn't have
Yes.
existed without Gary.
Yes.
But the work that we did to collect those most recent norms in 2017 was really, really challenging. And I think I remember saying, okay, that's it. We've done 3 studies. Somebody else can do it now. But neither of us can seem to retire, and we thought we would give it one more shot. So
Oh,
we're
that's
in the
awesome.
process right now of collecting data. So sometime late 2026 or perhaps 2027, which would be a 10-year um, uh, update. And it will be interesting to see. What we saw between 2006 and 2017 was not really growth around the 50th percentile, which makes sense. I mean, fluency is fluency, and you're not supposed to read faster. You're supposed to just read fluently. But there was change. There was growth at the bottom percentiles, that
Yeah.
those lower kids were, we have to speculate because we just get data. We don't study what's happening, but it appears teachers are more aware of the importance of fluency and working with all students so that those students who were far, far behind are making some progress. So I hope we see that continuing in the new set of norms.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a little interested to see if the new set of norms would show any results of our children not going to school so much during COVID.
That's the speculation that we
I
probably
don't
will
know,
see.
but I will be very interested
Mhm.
to delve in. I hope you'll
Yeah.
share them with us at a deep
Oh,
level.
yes. Oh, of course.
It's really
You're
exciting.
always my first
Yeah.
sharing.
So, Candace, you've spend a lot of time with kids. You also spend a lot of time with your colleagues who work with you and others to make all the enhancements. So, um, can you tell us just a few different things that you've been working on recently? Maybe some new features or products or resources. What are some of the recent releases that you have been working on?
As you mentioned, I still go 3 days a week and teach, and that is hands down my favorite part of my job, if I want to call it a job. It's not a job; it's a life, and I love going there. Partly because I love to just watch their faces light up, and I know that I know it makes a difference in their reading. But also when I'm with them and I'm having to struggle as a teacher, I'm always thinking, what can I do to make this a little bit better or easier for the teacher, because the teacher's jobs are huge. Or what can I do? What do I see that I've missed in the past? And so I'm come back with ideas. And who can imagine a life where you can come back with an idea and you have a team of people who are willing to make it real? And then you can go to a classroom and do it and make the phone call and say, this is fabulous, but we got to do one more thing. And
There's
so
always a but.
so I think it's been kind of a magical life. And hence, like you, Jan, I don't really want to give it up, even though maybe I should. Anyway, but recently there's 4 things that we've been working on hard that have been that are out there now that I'm really excited about. And one of them is, you just kind of talked about it a little bit, Jan, the decision making. Teachers have to make decisions, and they make decisions now. They need to learn to make decisions with data rather
Yeah.
than just our gut. And, we do, as teachers, we have pretty good feelings about things. We observe. But data is very, very helpful. And so we have now put in our program Data Mentor. And what Data Mentor does is it tracks or uses the data on the student's performance. And then as a student starts to become better at their first time they read and their comprehension is going up, the computer can give information back to the teacher that says it might be time to raise their level. Or maybe they should do less read-alongs. And so we try to give teachers information as they go. And so there's a little red button that says, we have data, we have a suggestion. And you just see the light on their faces. The kids want to see the suggestions. Now, every now and again, it's not a happy one because it'll be comprehension is not where it should be. So now let's see what you can do about your comprehension. And it suggests, the computer will suggest the teacher work on comprehension, which brings up another one that we've developed recently, and it's taken years actually. And it's because the only reason we really worry about, we really read is for information. So the comprehension is critical. We have developed or compiled a manual, not really a manual, it's not the right word. I'm just going to call it a compilation of lessons and actual handouts for kids and activities for kids to teach comprehension skills in the classroom for the classroom teacher to use as a handy, go to your desk and see what I can do about this. I see the problem. Can I get a lesson quickly that will address the problem? And it's very well done, I think. And I think it will help children and especially teachers who have that big burden. Also, in Read Live, there's a link, not to the full manual, but to some of those lessons and things. So when the data mentor says, this child needs help in comprehension, there's a link to go to right there in the program that says, here are some resources for you. So trying always to make the resources easy for teachers to get at because they just don't have the time. My first love has always been phonics. I loved your best program. If I looked around, I could probably find it if you really need it. But when I went to school in special education to become a special education teacher as an undergraduate, we had to take linguistics classes at the University of Minnesota in order to qualify to teach special ed. And so actually I brought with me one of our textbooks was this, which is a guide to teaching phonics written by June Orton, published in 1964. And as you can see, it's well worn. So that's where my real heart was. I mean, Fluency, Jan, yeah. But my real soul was always with the phonics because I worked with special ed kids. So when we developed Read Naturally, and Fluency was what was going on here in Minnesota, and the assessment you talked about, Standino and all that. That was what my work was focused on. But in my mind, I knew that phonics, there was a place for it. And we very quickly developed stories that had a phonics base that taught the phonics. And I'm going to tell a little secret here that I'm almost embarrassed to say, but I hid the phonics in those years. I had the phonics at the back of the lesson because it was a bad word. For many years, it was not something we were supposed to do, but I couldn't give it up. And so it was just always kind of included in the program. Today, we now have what is really a dream come true for a teacher because we can place, within Read Naturally, we can place a student in one of our phonics programs, either the one that develops fluency or the word warm-ups one, based on what they know today in their phonics. We give a little preview test. and it's right in the program. And then when they finish learning that set of lessons, then we can give them another little test to see, did they learn it? And if they learned it, we can move them on. If they didn't learn it, we can put them in the other program for a little bit of time to catch them up. So we really can get at that phonics very quickly, and it's a dream come true because the teacher does not have to go any place, doesn't have to get a whole bunch of flashcards. It's just a click of the button.
Mm.
Try this. Oh, you know that. Oh, wonderful. Ah. And so the data, right on the spot, decision making saves the teacher time and really helps the kids. They really track their own progress because they want to know, they want to go up, and they're real proud of themselves. There's just one more thing that we have that I'm really excited about, and that is progress monitoring of fluency. And that is now embedded in Read Naturally Live also. Now it's not the big benchmark with national norms, but it is a set of stories at instructional level that they read multiple times a year, and a little graph will come up to show the teacher how much progress has been made between the testings. And it also adds very important information for the teacher, but also the child, how many stories they've read in that amount of time. And so the impact of how much work they're doing and how many words they're reading is right there on the graph for the kids, the teachers, and the administrators. So that is another really exciting feature. I work with a woman who has worked with me now at this school that I'm at for the last 8 years. And when she started to work with me, she was she'd been a teacher, and it's been really fun to watch her learn to love data. Maybe as much as I do. She's just, so what does it show? So what are we going to do now? And it's really fun to watch how I think the Read Naturally program has actually taught her a little bit about how important it is. So those are 4 big things that are out there right now.
Those are, I both of you touched on certain things that just kind of ring a bell in my head. I spend most of my time training teachers and using the program. And so I hear a lot about, where their stumbling blocks are, what things that they need to learn, and how to find the information. And so one of the things that's beautiful about Data Mentor is the place that the suggestion is located is when you are with the student in the final step to decide if they pass the story. And Jan talked about this with the 6th grade student. She had an example, and I know, Mom, you have examples of the same kind of thing where the kid says, I did this, right? The kid believes that and knows that he's the one that practiced, he's the one that did the work. And so Data Mentor suggestions are when the student and the teacher are together, so the teacher can easily include the student, and the student can get engaged with their data and say, hey, do you think you're ready? This program thinks you can handle something harder. And the pride that comes from that, and the knowledge that it is their own work, and that is why it's placed right there. You can find it in other places at any point too, but the reason it was placed there, and it's embedded in the student side so that the students can benefit from the information too when you're right there working with them. So that was a genius way of doing it, that I think teachers really like. And they also, for new teachers, knowing when to raise their level. Jan talked a lot about the importance of being in difficult text. Well, the program's effective. So pretty soon, the placement level is no longer the right level. And so when you're new to the program, it can be so overwhelming. And up until we had Data Mentor, that was really hard to know when to make those changes. Eventually, the real experienced teachers probably don't need to lean on it quite as much, but it is so valuable to have something say, this is what we think based on this current data. And for new teachers especially, it's kind of a relief to know you have this support. So we just get rave reviews about it. People just love it. So it's been a lot of fun to watch teachers get to to engage with that data as well. So, is there anything either of you want to say before we wrap up? I know we're nearing the end of our time together. So, um, is there anything either of you would like to add to this conversation before we sign off today?
Well, Candy has thanked me a couple of times. I wanna be sure to thank her for for all the work over all of these years in coming up with this brilliant strategy that you have refined and expanded throughout the decades with a team now of people working with you. No more dining room table and recording cassettes in your basement or wherever you do that. But this little thing that did start on your dining room table has changed the lives of children around the world and teachers because, like you say, Claire, they learn to use it and it incorporates, oh, this is, I could do this other places and this is how things work. And um, what an amazing legacy you continue to leave. Yeah. So thank you on behalf of the millions of children.
Well, I also want to thank both of you. You both are inspirations to people. You do what you love. You do something that brings not just joy to you, but the reason it brings joy to you is because of the huge impact it has on teachers and students. And
Mm.
neither one of you can ever retire. Um, I don't think you
Uh-oh.
ever want to. You're never going to. You always claim maybe you will, but I don't believe either of you. And it's been for me to watch my whole career, to watch both of you maintain your, discipline, your engagement, your love for it has just been inspiring. It's amazing to get to do something for a job that you not only enjoy, that also serves that need that we all have to help others. And you both do it beautifully. So thank you for being a leader and an inspiration to those of us who want to follow in your footsteps. So we appreciate your
Well,
time.
and I want to thank you, Claire, because you, with your energy and youth and your experience, you bring that news to people that we
Mm,
can't reach.
that's right.
And you're very good at teaching teachers and see, helping them to be better and to learn about new programs. I think that's important.
Well, it's really fun. I love working with the teachers because I too feel that it makes an impact, right?
Yeah.
So we're all very blessed to get to do that. And very blessed to get to spend a little bit of time together today. So thank you both very much for being here, for sharing your wisdom. We appreciate it.